clearing the air we breathe, to beautifying the patios, to putting food on our tables, plants are essential to our well-being. They nourish our minds and our bodies. They brighten our days and our plates. Today's guest has been a staple here in Livonia with their beautiful arrangements for weddings to their flowers for your own garden. You've probably seen some of their work. Today we have Alexandria Steele from George's Livonia Gardens to talk about their business, plants, and gardening tips. We all need those. Welcome to Celebrate Michigan, the show produced on the campus of Madonna University. I'm Chris Benson, and we're so excited for this week's show. Alexandria, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell us about Livonia Gardens, George's Gardens.
So we're a family-owned business. We've been in business since 1967. It was started by my great-grandfather, George, hence the name, George's Livonia Gardens. He and my grandfather ran it together, and then my grandfather and my mom ran it together, and now me and my mom run it together.
So it was passed down. Were you excited about this? Like you obviously saw the family tradition coming, right?
Yeah.
Do you love plants?
I do. You know, I enjoy being there. I enjoy, working with our clientele and customer service. I've been doing it, since I was 13, and I've been on the property, running around since I was a little kid. It's, my grandfather's house is on the property, so we take care of the whole place, and I've been there on and off through high school and college, and now I'm doing that full time and running it with my mom.
So for someone who's never been there, describe where it's at and what they can experience when they're there.
Sure. So we are located on the southwest corner of 7 Mile and Merriman in Livonia. We have like an 1.5 acre space that we utilize. We have 4 different buildings that have retail merchandise in there. So, May and June's our busiest months. That's the planting time. So we carry annuals and perennials, hanging baskets, porch pots, and then also our house plants. And we are a full-service florist as well. So we do weddings and funeral work, and then the corsages and boutonnieres for, the dances for high schools, and then any type of event flowers. And we just, we enjoy servicing the local community, and we have a couple events throughout the year as well.
And I know you have fun things to buy. Not that plants and annuals and perennials aren't fun, but other little items.
Yeah, we have a lot of gift items that are they're all kind of like, garden oriented. A lot of lawn decor, solar items that light up at nights that are solar powered, a lot of chimes, other hanging decor. We have, your kind of tchotchke things that are cute, whether it's, cute little sayings on, plaques. We carry a lot of like memorial and bereavement pieces, stepping stones, angels, some statuary. So a little bit of everything, compared to other places that are strictly, plants and stuff. We have all the decorative items that kind of carry us over throughout the seasons for gift pieces. Because what we carry changes depending on the season. Like we carry Christmas trees in the wintertime and pumpkins in the fall. So we have a little bit of everything to, from season to season for any of your outdoor decorative needs.
So I am a plant enthusiast. I would not say I'm an expert, but I'm in the beginning stages of it. When you have people coming into the store, what are the questions that they ask?
We definitely get a lot of repeat questions. A lot of new homeowners, young families that haven't, had the opportunity to have their own yards and do the work themselves. So we get a lot of landscaping questions, things about, what will do well in sun, what will do well in shade. We'll work with people and look at pictures on their phone to see what their yard looks like to give them proper advice. We carry vegetables and herbs, so a lot of, what would do well in this type of garden bed environment, what can be planted next to each other, how far to space things. So a lot of technical questions, and we're there to answer those, give the best advice that we can, and encourage people to do more at-home gardening, because it is important to, one, for the environment and for our pollinators, and just to encourage, having your own environment at home to help with, just ecological reasons to maintain your own gardening at home.
And what are some, I'm sure when you're driving around and you see people's, houses and they've got their plants and their flowers and everything, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making when they are
Sure, yeah. One of the biggest mistakes that I see when I drive around is like trees and shrubs that are planted way too close together. It happens often because homeowners want instant gratification from large-scale shrubbery and trees. And what happens is oftentimes the landscapers come in, they're just told what to do. They put the things way too close together, and after a few years, these bigger plants start to basically fight each other for nutrients from the soil. So half of one will start to die. So that's something I see often, or people that have planted certain perennials that do not belong in direct sunlight, way out in full sun. So we get a lot of questions, why did this thing die on me? So, and it could be a multitude of reasons: overwatering, underwatering, fertilizer burn. You can fertilize things too much. So there's a myriad of things that can go wrong. But oftentimes the best way to deal with things is to leave it alone and let it be and let nature do its thing, because plants can heal. There's a lot of damage you can do to them and they can still come back from that.
And it's funny, I feel like I'm seeing plants everywhere. And I know in our next segment, or our third segment, we're going to do something with succulents, which I know are very popular. But I see plants being sold at the gas station, big box stores. They just feel like they're everywhere. And I wonder, what is the benefit of working with a small local place as opposed to just buying a plant and trying it out?
Yeah, there's a lot of things involved with that that are hurting small businesses with these big box stores carrying plants, or even fresh cut flowers. That's hurt the florist side of the industry as well. The difference of going to us as opposed to a big box store is quality of the plants that have been sourced, quality of the care that the plants are receiving while they're on the business site, and the level of knowledge that that business has. So this is our bread and butter. It's our niche. So we just have better knowledge just over years of experience, and we pass that knowledge on to our employees to make sure they're giving the correct information to our clientele as well. You're not going to get that same level of knowledge at other places, especially like with Walmart and Meijer carrying plants now. For them, it's just an extra thing to have, and they do not take care of the stuff there. I hate to see it, because I still go to my own grocery shopping and seeing plants that are struggling outside because they're not on a watering regimen. It's not their main concern to take care of those plants. For us, we have to do it. That's our bread and butter, and that's what we have to take care of.
And the expertise, I appreciate that. Gosh, we're already time for a break. So stay tuned, and we're going to hear more about George's Livonia Gardens and learn about some tips and tricks for you as well. So see you in a few.
You realize that 49 million Americans struggle with hunger? That's 1 out of every 6 Americans.
These people are around us every day. They're our friends, they're our coworkers, their kids go to school with our kids.
Sometimes we're not even aware that they're struggling. This problem is closer than you think. But so is the solution.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arts-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
I present to you Algebra 2, Foreign Languages, and finally, Biology. Who among you will step up to their challenge?
Me.
Yeah, I'll do it. Me too. Sign me up.
Take on the tough classes now. You need them to prepare for college.
I want to see the world.
When you pick up a book,
I used to read every night to all the younger kids,
and let your imagination break free, you won't believe how much fun it can be.
Let down your help!
Experience a world of adventure, excitement, and endless possibilities. Get tangled up in a good book. Explore new worlds. Read. Visit read.gov today.
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson, and I'm here with Alex from George's Livonia Gardens, and we're talking all about plants. I mentioned I'm a plant nut, so I'm loving it. I'm loving the oxygen I'm getting from these plants. And I think you mentioned the snake plant is good for air cleaning. And
yeah, actually all the ones that are on the table here are, this is a snake plant that's really good for oxygenation in the home. Requires minimal care. This is a peace lily, also good, but this needs kind of constant watering. They droop pretty quickly, and oftentimes people think I killed it. No, you didn't. Just soak it really good for a bit, and it'll perk right back up. And then this guy on the corner, that is a rubber plant, also minimal care. So yeah, they all do a little bit. They all are good for oxygen in the home. They all do have a bit different care. Some things need some more TLC. Some things are best to just leave alone and water like once a month. So yeah, there's a lot of intricacies with house plants, but they've become very popular in the last maybe 5 to 10 years.
And we were talking about that. I feel like during COVID, everywhere I looked, people were working at home and there was like plants. And so did you see that uptick in business? How did COVID affect you?
Yeah, initially it was hard because of the shutdown. So we weren't allowed to have people work, and it was just myself and my mom working. And I mean, it's our property. We were able to, maintain being open. And then once the mask mandate started and, people were allowed to work and people were allowed to shop, we saw a huge intake in customers because the restaurants were shut down. So for like Mother's Day, for example, people were coming in for gifts when they couldn't take mom out to dinner like they normally would. So that weekend was incredibly hectic in 2020, and we saw just a big uptick in sales of vegetable plants and herbs, and people wanting to start seeds that have never done it before, because people wanted to be able to plant their own food at home and cultivate their own food at home, because there was the scare of, are we going to be able to get groceries on a weekly basis? And luckily everything's settled down, but there was that fear that ingrained in people that pushed them towards wanting to live a more economical life at home and be able to sustain themselves at home.
And I know the interest, I don't know if it was just that people wanted to take care of things or, but it seems like everywhere I looked, people were all of a sudden like, oh, I bought a plant, I'm taking care of a plant, or I'm not taking care of a plant.
Right. Yeah, we definitely had a lot of older people that were like, oh my God, thank God I see color. I have nothing to do. I just want to see color at home and have something to do. So yeah, there was a lot of that too, for sure.
And I know we've got some pictures just to give our viewers an idea about Georgia, since we can't go there today. So talk us through what we're taking a look at here.
This is our storefront in the summertime. So we actually, like I said, we have 4 buildings on our property. This is our main one that you'd see from the corner. This is kind of the building that started it all. When we purchased the property in 1964, it was actually a little fruit stand that we took over and converted to a garden place. And then we've continuously built up and added on and utilized the property as much as we can. So we've grown to both edges of it. We can't bring any more stuff on, really. So yeah, that's our storefront, and we have a lot of retail space, and we enjoy taking care of it. And it's really accessible to clientele. We've added a lot of like cement work on the property, so it's easily accessible to handicapped people, wheelchairs. So we strive for, like I said, customer service and being able to have it accessible to everyone.
And we talked a bit about COVID and just like increase in interest in plants, which sounds funny, and I know you also mentioned, a lot of home buyers in the last few years. Home market's been really busy.
Yes, for sure.
And just this increased interest in it. How has that affected you?
So yeah, with a lot of new homeowners, it created a need for new, like landscapers and people that can come in and do the work, because not everybody knows how to do it. Younger families, younger people like my generation or younger, they haven't been taught how to do those things. So we're the source for that information outside of, obviously just looking stuff up online. But people like a tactile, being able to see it and touch it and learn about it, and not just reading about it online. So having that access to us or other garden centers, we refer people all the time where we work with other places in the community too. If we don't carry something, we refer people. So yeah, like the new homeowners, people definitely wanting to start their own gardens at home. And so we've seen with the home buying and the homeowners market increasing, a lot of new families, and we're getting a lot of that business towards us now too.
Are there plants that are like trendy at certain times, or do you see something coming in like that's new? Are there new different, you know, things that you have for the home or inside or out?
Yeah, house plants have definitely, those have increased in the last 10 years or so. Succulents especially, those are super trendy, and not just for the home. We're seeing it also used in weddings and events.
Oh, weddings, really?
Yeah, we've had people that want to do succulents as party favors instead of, like, you know, buying stuff to give to their guests, having something tangible that's alive, and it's less wasteful, and it's, you know, it's a nice gift, and people are also using them in bouquets and flower arrangements, which is nice. You know, there's a learning curve there to being able to use that, but yes, they're very trendy right now, and they're great for, like, you know, a college dorm room where you have very limited space and limited light. They can flourish in environments like that, so it's a nice, you know, gift for your teen, your college-age student, or new homeowners that have no idea what to do or how to take care of plants. We get people all the time that say, I don't have a green thumb, which is always amusing to me because we can all have a green thumb. It's really not hard to do these things. It's just having the right knowledge base.
And are cactuses considered succulents? I don't know the answer to this.
To my knowledge, no. Cactuses are cactuses.
Because I hear it, because those are also, I see them like in all kinds, on T-shirts, people, they're just everywhere
Yeah,
right
succulents
now.
are kind of in the cacti family, not the vice versa. But yeah, succulents, you'll see those growing in Arizona, Florida, and they get huge because they have the climate for it, and there's just never a winter where they can die off. So unlike what our weather that we have here.
In Michigan,
Yeah.
I know. Well, we're already up to another break. I can't believe it. But when we come back, we're actually going to get, Alex is getting her hands a little dirty, and we're going to dig in literally to succulents just a bit more. We'll be back talking about Georgia's Livonia Gardens. We'll see you in just a few.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
There's a lot of fear in coming back to school. I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but one of the teachers was Miss Araceli. She gave me direction. Every single time I had a question, she'll put down whatever she's doing and she'll sit there with you until you get it. 50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education. What are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else?
Or will you dare do something different?
Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills.
The smarts?
Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget.
That'd be cool.
Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
Welcome back to Celebrate Michigan. I'm Chris Benson. We're back in the studio with Alex from Georgia's Livonia Gardens, and we're talking succulents. They are popular. I see them everywhere. You've brought some to us.
I have.
I'd love to hear more about them because I feel like they are a very special plant here for Michigan. They are not native, from what I understand.
Not at all.
And I'm just seeing them everywhere. So tell us what we need to know about succulents.
So the main thing to know about succulents is leave them alone.
Oh,
The less care, the better, for sure. They like dry soil, very aerated soil with a lot of drainage. They can be pretty close together. It takes a very long time for them to grow in our climate. They are in Michigan, they'd be considered a house plant. They could be outside in the summertime, but once it drops below maybe 50 degrees at night or during the day, they'd have to come back in. So what I've brought here today is just an assortment, and I'm going to show you how we would do a little potting arrangement at home or just to transplant them in general. So when you have small pots, the kind of rule with transplanting for these guys is if they ever outgrow the pot and you need to transplant it, go twice as big as the container it was in before, so it has room for the root system to grow. So for example, when you have something that's about as big as your container here, since this is a young plant, we would only put one item in here. We're not going to crowd it with other pieces. So and this kind of transplanting rule applies to most things. So when you're potting your own outdoor planters at home, or you're putting stuff in the ground, when you take the root ball out of the little cheap containers that they come in, you want to break up this soil first. So you'd have some fresh soil in your container, which I have right here. We don't fill it all the way. So when we go to plant them, we would be breaking up these roots to allow and it's not that they wouldn't grow, it's just they're going to have an easier time re-rooting into the fresh soil. So this gives the roots an opportunity to basically stretch and start new in the container that they're going to be in. So that would just go in there, and then you'd add soil around the edges just to keep it in place. And then if the soil is existing that is very, very dry, then give it maybe half a cup of water, or if there's good drainage, you could let the whole thing soak through just under the sink, and then wait like a month before watering it again.
A month, really?
Yeah, if it's inside. When things are outdoors, just because of the Michigan heat and humidity, it's going to pull moisture out of the soil a lot quicker. So if something like this was outside, probably once a week watering, but indoors, once a month.
And how high do you fill it with soil? Because I always feel like I either plant them too low or too high. So plants.
When you add the soil back into the edges of the pot just to fill it, you just kind of go right up to the top of the pot, not to the point where it's overflowing. And when things are, relatively small like this, you don't have to put rocks or anything at the bottom. But if you had like a very deep container, succulents are very low profile, root growth. So they do not need, all this soil. So if for cost reasons, to not have to use that much soil, you can use pebbles, stones, gravel at the base of your pot, or even I've had people use like styrofoam just to fill the space, and then gravel, and then your dirt, because you really only need about that much for a bigger container. So for this guy right here, since it's a big enough container, we can put more than just one little guy in here. I would say something like this size, this is about an 8-inch container, could fit 3 or 4 of these. And same principle, we've got it about half full of dirt. We would just kind of make our spaces, and I use my hands. I'm not worried about getting dirty. Use gardening gloves if you want to, but it's dry soil, so it's pretty brittle and comes apart easily. So with succulents, it's really easy because you can kind of manhandle them without them getting damaged. And what's great about them is when the little leaves and stuff fall off, you can actually reroot those little leaves.
Really?
As long as they've come off from the stem cleanly.
Okay.
So for example, like these little guys, I'll just break one off so you can see. Where it has a little bit of that green-white tip to it, this would just get put fresh in soil and give it a little bit of water. And it takes a long time, but these little guys will start to sprout little new ones off the base, and then you're restarting your own succulents. So I've had people do that to make little wedding party favors.
Oh, neat.
Starting them at home. And and certain succulents, they will grow really tall and they will get to the point where you've outgrown their pot. Like this guy, for example, they kind of grow straight up, so you'll get a long stalk at the bottom. And the way to repair it essentially is to just clean cut the whole thing and then put it right back into dirt again. So they're really low maintenance. They're fun to do. It's a great project for kids to learn about how cultivation is done, how things are grown. A little bit more intricate than the lima bean and the paper towel and the plant like you do in school.
I remember doing that.
Yeah, and what's nice about succulents is they all flower at some point. That's not the beauty of them. The beauty is the foliage. But for example, we'll get a flower that comes straight out the middle of it that's like bright orange and pink, and that flower will die. You just cut it off, and then you have your succulent again. So they all flower.
That's a great point, because I have some, and they've grown, and I've been afraid. I was like, do I prune them? Do I, can I do that? Would that be okay for them? So I'm so glad you mentioned that.
For sure.
And you've created such an attractive little plant. For them.
Yeah, we could probably fit one more in here too, but even something little tiny like this, which is a cute little gift, you wouldn't even need to add dirt. You would just take something like this and take it out of its container, and it's, you know, there it is.
Very
it's ready to go.
easy. Well, I love this. And again, tips for succulents. What do people need to know about them, just to reiterate?
Right. To reiterate, less is more. When they're in the home, we're only watering them once a month, especially in little containers like this. They shouldn't stay in these long term. They could be in here a couple months, but you would want to get them in something more substantial. And like I said, twice the size of the container that it comes in. They don't need a particular soil. There are succulent and cacti soils out there, but honestly, regular, just high quality potting mix is totally fine for them. There are fertilizers out there. If they're cared for properly, you really don't need it, unless you're trying to give them, you know, a steroid worth of growth. So yeah, they're easy to do at home. There's a lot of different ones. This is called string of pearls because that's exactly what it looks like. It's a string of pearls. There's so many different varieties out there. There's so many colors. You know, in Florida, for example, something like this, or in Arizona, they get to be this big around.
Wow.
And you've seen, like, if you ever get out of, you know, the airport in Florida, you can see huge aloe plants out on the, and they're growing in gravel basically. But they can't get that big here.
Well, Alex, where can we find you? Tell us how we can find you online.
Sure. Online, we're on Facebook, which is just facebook.com/George's Livonia Gardens. Our storefront's at southwest corner of 7 Mile and Merriman in Livonia, so we're highly visible. People see us from the road all the time, and we have customers that have lived in Livonia for 20 years and say, I've never stopped. I finally decided to stop today. I didn't realize how big it was. So we're highly visible. We have a lot of different, like I said, outdoor items, indoor items, plants for every season. We've got pansies right now because they can tolerate the cold weather, and then by Mother's Day weekend we'll have pretty much all the plants you'd need for your season, and you can start planning Memorial Day.
Well, check them out. We are so glad you joined us. Thank you, Alex, for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Celebrate Michigan.